For as long as I can recall, every election cycle, every time a candidate stepped to a podium or sought to say something pithy right after kissing a baby, the words, "I will be the person that will end the corruption of special interest money in Washington, D.C." will cross their lips and drop like a hammer, only then turning into a mushy hammer of reality and lies by the time they slip into their first Beltway Committee meeting. We always hear how this money has to go before we can have an honest government. But go where and how? Questions few are willing to even consider answering for fearing their bank account may drop. Not this time. The book is perfectly titled Nation on the Take, How Big Money Corrupts Our Democracy and What We Can Do About It. We're joined by the co-authors, senior analyst at the Center for Public Integrity, Wendell Potter, and executive director of the organization Issue One, Nick Penniman. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. And Wendell, I'm going to go ahead and begin with you. Wait a minute, corruption and politics? Isn't it fair to say the two can't exist without each other?
That does seem to be the American way, doesn't it? But it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, our founding fathers anticipated that we would have corruption that we would need to deal with, from the beginning of this country's formation, establishment. But it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, we've reached the point at which we no longer have a very functioning government. People are obviously very fed up. I think that explains to a large extent why we have such support for both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. So yes, they seem to go hand in hand. The American public, I think, has become very cynical, but we don't have to put up with it, and this is what our book is all about.
So, Nick, let's take it from this perspective. The politicians who I just quoted, all of them, they really do want to go to Washington. They want to get rid of this, and they want to clean it up. When they get there, though, what is that stone wall of reality that they hit that basically makes them say, I can't do this?
Well, the Stonewall of reality is a PowerPoint presentation that the DCCC shows them, and we actually show a slide of it in the book. The DCCC, when they inaugurated the last class of Democrats, showed them what their model daily schedule should be for a new member of Congress, a new Democrat in Congress. And on that model daily schedule was 4 hours of call time a day. That's just fundraising from rich people on the phone. And then an extra hour of what's called strategic outreach, which is fundraising in person in Washington at nice restaurants from lobbyists, typically the lobbyists that you're supposed to be regulating based on your committee assignment.
Well, let's be real honest here. We're not just talking about, I don't know, a couple of bucks under the table here and there, and maybe somebody slips the keys to a car somewhere. Wendell, aren't we talking about what is basically legalized corruption? This is something that goes on right in front of everybody, right on top, right so everybody can see it.
You're exactly right. We write that it's in broad daylight, and but the problem is the mainstream media pays very little attention to this, and that's why Nick and I felt compelled to write this book. We wanted to connect the dots for people, to help people understand the connection between all the money that's spent to influence public policy and elections, how that affects us in our daily lives. We look at 5 different industries, for example, and show just how we are often disadvantaged because of the way that the special interests are able to manipulate public policy, the crony capitalism that really pretty much personifies the way things are done in Washington these days.
So, Nick, let's try and connect some of those dots here. People are looking at other individuals who want to become their elected representatives, people who say, I'm going to stop the corruption. What is the smart question that they need to then ask that politician, or the smart thing they need to say to these people, forcing them to look at what's really going on?
I think you have to ask the politician what bills he or she is ready to fight for to end the problem. And there, it could be everything from fixing the FEC, which is a horribly broken agency, the Federal Election Commission, which oversees campaign finance law, all the way over to developing new ways of financing campaigns, or cleaning up the lobbying system. I mean, there's all kinds of legislation on Capitol Hill, bipartisan legislation that's sitting there right now, and there's just not enough momentum behind any of it to get it done. So you should ask them specifically, what pieces of legislation have you signed on to, or are you prepared to sign on to end this corruption?
All right, Wendell, let's take it another step further then. In your book, what is it that you tell the voters that they need to know in order to try to stop this?
Well, first of all, get informed and do some things, get behind initiatives like in the state of South Carolina a few years ago. They banned lobbyists from making campaign contributions to lawmakers, which is a very important piece of legislation. Tallahassee, Florida Tea Party folks and progressives came together because local politics was so corrupt, and they passed legislation there to clean up local elections. We're seeing that at all levels of government, state, local, and national. So a big first step is to become aware of what organizations are working on this issue, and also there are 5 initiatives in states on the ballot this coming November to address campaign finance issues. We're talking about some of the reddest of states, Arkansas being one of them, Arizona and Idaho and South Dakota and Washington are all looking at the voters will be voting on initiatives. So it is a movement that has begun, and one of the things Nick and I are hoping to do with this book is to raise the awareness of that movement.
Nick, I only got about 45 seconds left, but oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, and Ed, I was going to break in and just say that this is a left-right movement too. This is not just liberals. This is conservatives. It's independents. This issue polls through the roof. 84% of Americans want this problem fixed, and we're actually seeing a lot of energy coming out of the Tea Party movement right now against it because the Tea Party folks feel shut out by the establishment, big money Republicans at the top, and they see the cronyism that results from that. So I think we're, in an otherwise very polarized election cycle where there's a lot dividing us, this is one of the very few things that probably unites us all as Americans this year.
I only got 10 seconds left, Nick. Do you think we'll see this in our time, in our lifetimes, that it ends?
If we don't, then there's got to be another revolution to fix it. And Thomas Jefferson.
No, I'm going to go right along with that. No, stay right there. The revolution is exactly what needs to be, and that's exactly what needs to happen. Start the revolution, people. The book is called Nation on the Take, How Big Money Corrupts Our Democracy and What We Can Do About It. Do something about it. Demand some answers from those people that say they want to represent you in Washington, D.C. Nick Penniman, Wendell Porter. Gentlemen, great book. Thanks so much for joining us. I hope next time we talk, maybe there are indeed some answers. We appreciate your time. Stay with us. The fastest 60 minutes of news, The Hardline, continues.